Hello everyone, I'm Madame Sensei. I teach Spanish, French, and Japanese out here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and I'm continuing my musings about how I've adapted the guided language acquisition development techniques for secondary classrooms. I teach high school, and how am I going to make these techniques developed for elementary school work for me? So I've been doing a lot of experimentation, and we were talking about expert groups. Now in the original, of course, the idea of the expert group is you call students over to you and you work on a couple of paragraphs with them, and then you send them back to their table mates with some expert knowledge, and how are they going to impart that expert knowledge to them? And that just wasn't working for me in a class of first-year students who didn't have enough vocabulary, didn't have enough grammar, didn't have enough background with the language. So I've been experimenting with the idea of an expert group being in sentences. This one I've had varying degrees of success with, but I want to tell you what I did and see if maybe you can tweak it better to fit yourself. So this one is running dictation, which is also called messenger. So we have a big book that we've been working on, right? And the students really need to know these sentences because I've gone through and I've chosen the crucial sentences for the student to know. Even with the big book that I do very much like TPRS, and I have the students repeat after me each time and they get to choose a food and everything, even with that, the students still need repetition with these sentences. They still need more repetition. So I turned to running dictation as a hopeful way to get them a little extra repetition, and each person could become an expert on one of the sentences in the big book. So my tables are set up in groups of 6. So I'll have, 2 people here, 1 person here, 1 person here, 2 people here. And I looked at the big books that I had written, and they all turned out to be about 9 sentences long. Some of them were 8 sentences, some of them were 10 sentences. So I printed each page of the big book as large as I could, and I wrote a number in the corner, the page number, pretty large, okay? And I printed it on cardstock so that one class wouldn't destroy it. Actually, the first time I did it on paper, you'll see in my video. But I didn't want the other classes to destroy them because, I wanted to use them for a little while. But the main thing is that this page will get hung up kind of like a poster. You can see this class had chosen that they were going to say, the waiter says, "I recommend to you crepes." So I'd already put that in because that's what they chose for their big book. This is the baked potato. This is the topping of the baked potato. Doesn't matter to me if they remember des crêpes because I need them to remember this part. Now, I live out in a portable, and sometimes I get really frustrated. Oh my gosh, the building has totally forgotten about me. They've left me out of something because I'm all the way in the hinterlands. And then I remember, oh, I'm all the way in the hinterlands. I can do whatever the heck I want, and nobody's going to notice. I can have my fake tour de France around the school. Nobody's going to notice. I can be as loud as I want. Nobody's going to notice. So I decided to take advantage of the topography of my portable, and I've got all this real estate on the outside. And I thought, well, instead of having the students run around in the classroom, barking their shins on the tables, and I did trip over a student backpack at one point this year and broke my leg really horribly. I'm going to have them outside. This is before I broke my leg. You can see I'm standing pretty well there. So I just decided I was going to send my French 3 students out to choose places to hang up signs, and then the French students would be ready to do it. But I do live in the Pacific Northwest, and at one point it was raining, and so I had some students run ahead to the cafeteria. These are commons. There was nobody here in the morning, but the tables are set up like this, and I had them tape some signs to some tables. I had been a little afraid of bringing my classes into the building because running dictation can get quite noisy as students run back and forth, but my students were pretty chill that day, so it wasn't a big deal. But I did keep them out of the rain. So I always give instructions in English because my very first year teaching, I learned my lesson the hard way. I had students pretending to understand, and they didn't understand. I had one student trying not to show me she was crying because she had no idea what I was saying. So I give my instructions in English so that I lower that affective filter and I get the students doing what I want them to do. So this is my instructions. I say, first of all, okay, you've got your table group. Decide who's going to be the writer. They get to stay inside the room, seated at the table. Count off the remaining people at the table. Okay, so if I have a table group of 6 people, one person's the writer, everyone else is number 1, next person's number 2, next person's number 3, next person's number 4, next person's number 5. Now, there are, and I fill in how many. Maybe there's 9, maybe there's 10, maybe there's 8. And so I'll write that here. And I'll say, oh, you got 5 people. Decide who's going to do double duty. Decide how you're going to handle it. How are you going to support each other? And that's a big part of the GLAD technique is, how are you going to solve your problem? And when I say go, you run outside and find your poster. You're not allowed to write anything down. You're not allowed to take a picture. You're going to have to memorize what's on the poster and run back and dictate it to the writer and make sure they're spelling things correctly. And of course, my last thing, this is before I tripped over the student backpack. I specifically had to say, don't trip, because I didn't want them to get too crazy. The first time I did this, we had read the big book chorally for a week and a half, and the students still had a hard time pronouncing their sentences. So normally in the big book, I say a sentence, the students repeat it back. They still, when they were individually pronouncing them, they still had a difficult time. So if nothing else, this was a good thing for pronunciation practice, and this was really good for getting them to think about spelling. And since I started with my French class, French spelling is really, really difficult. So in that respect, it worked really well. When everyone is done and they've written their entire all 9 lines to their writer, have everyone sit down with a piece of paper and copy down all 9 lines. It's only 9 lines. It's only 8 lines. Maybe your big book's only 5 lines long. It's not a lot to ask them. Have them get that extra repetition, copying it down. And then when everyone's got it copied down, you can say, yay, you're a winner. So now I'm going to show you a video of my students running around doing this. I tried to show the signs, but really I only got one sign shot with any clarity at the end where they had been hung because they were just too far away. But you can see that the signs are far away and the students are running around like madmen. And I will show you the video and then I'll give you my final thoughts.
Okay, so number 4, that's going to be...
4.
Wait.
En français, en français.
I can't remember.
Oh, okay, reviens.
L apostrophe A D E. And it was tu payes avec l'argent.
And then I
Et
always
tu
find...
payes
Okay.
avec l'argent.
Yeah, I think it's that.
Double Y?
What? What?
I don't know, it's Y on vo. So just Y. Literally just Y.
Oh, with a Y?
The letter Y. Y. On. Oui.
Non, à supermarché.
Allez, le true. La farine. True la farine. Gonna true then la farine.
Oh, you turned it off. Okay, Don's
Oh, it's a lip.
So my final thoughts are, I had higher hopes for running Dictation, aka Messenger. It was really good, really, really good for students to think about their pronunciation, because I think when they were repeating things chorally with the big book, they were kind of drowned out with everyone else. And so they didn't get as much practice as I had hoped that they would get with the choral repetition. And certainly thinking about spelling was really important. But because it was a fast activity, it was kind of like the game Sixes. One of the ways to play it, you're rolling dice and you're trying to write as fast as possible. I find when my students are working really, really fast, they're only putting things in short-term memory, not in long-term memory. So I don't think this really helped long-term memory retention. It was certainly a diversion. It was fun. I was worried that they were going to trip. I guess I was like prophetic, knowing that I was going to trip the next month. But I stopped experimenting with it after a while because I didn't feel like it was giving me a lot of bang for my buck. Now, quiz trade, yes, definitely. That gives me a lot of really good improvement on my students. So this one I didn't play with as much. So that's my final thoughts on this. Next one, I'm going to give you a new expert group because I experiment with quite a lot of things. And again, if you want a printout of all of this, go to studio-nemo.com. I have a printout on my musings on GLAD or in the Duolingo Educators Network. I also have it posted there, or of course you can comment down below and I'll talk to you more about it, because maybe you've got an angle for Messenger, aka running Dictation, that is better than anything I thought of, and I would love to steal your idea. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.